Hey guys, tonight we slip into the misty streets of ancient China, where the air hums with the clatter of wooden carts and the faint rustle of something peculiar overhead umbrellas. Not quite as you know them. Picture yourself weaving through a crowded market, the sun beating down, and there, above a merchant stall, a wide woven canopy sways gently, tossing shade like a lazy emperor's wave. These aren't your flimsy dollar store pop-ups. They're the OG sunblockers. Born in a world where staying cool was a flex and getting sunburned might just mean you're cursed by the heavens. Fair warning, you probably won't survive this heat without a decent parasol, so keep your wits about you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the heart of ancient China, sometime around 2000 BCE, when the world was a patchwork of tribes and the idea of China was more a vibe than a map. The umbrella, or what we'll call its scrappy ancestor, is just starting to take shape. It's not called an umbrella, yet more like a sun shield or sky cloth in the local tongue, though nobody's writing dictionaries to pin that down. You're watching a farmer, his face creased from squinting at the sun, rig up a crude canopy over his ox cart. It's just palm leaves lashed to a bamboo frame. But it works. The shade keeps his melons from wilting, and he's not sweating buckets anymore. Word spreads. Soon, every trader in the village wants one. And the umbrella's first chapter begins? This is no rainy day gear. Rain's a blessing here, tied to dragon gods and good harvests. So nobody's dodging it. But the sun, that's a tyrant. You notice how the heat warps the air, making distant hills shimmer like a fever dream. The early Chinese figured out that shade wasn't just comfort, it was survival. A mainstream historical fact backs this up. Archaeological digs in Henan province uncovered bronze fittings from the late Neolithic period, suggesting portable canopies were used in ceremonial carts. These weren't for rain, but for shielding VIPs from the sun during rituals. You can almost hear the priests chanting, their voices muffled under a swaying canopy, as they parade past you. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Some early sun shields weren't even for people. You spot a farmer draping a woven mat over his prized pig to keep it from overheating on the way to market. The pig, unbothered, snorts in approval. It's a small detail, but it shows how deep this shade obsession ran. Even livestock got the VIP treatment. Historians still argue whether these proto-umbrellas were purely practical or already carried spiritual weight. Were they just sunblock? Or did they symbolize protection from cosmic forces? You ponder this as you watch a village elder wave a bamboo frame over a shrine, maybe warding off bad vibes as much as UV rays. You're starting to feel the rhythm of this place. The air smells of dust and roasted chestnuts from a nearby stall. Your sandals crunch on the packed earth as you follow a group of traders bartering under a shared canopy. These early umbrellas are clunky, think less elegant parasol and more portable roof. They're heavy, often needing two people to carry, and they don't fold. You chuckle at the thought of trying to collapse one like your modern umbrella, only to end up wrestling a bamboo monster. Joke number one, if these ancient Chinese had invented umbrellas that fold, they'd have conquered the world by lunchtime. The materials are simple but clever. You run your fingers along a bamboo pole, its surface worn smooth by years of use. The canopy is woven from palm or mulberry bark, sometimes layered with wax to make it stiffer. It's not waterproof, but it doesn't need to be. You notice a woman nearby, her hands calloused from weaving, stitching a new canopy with hemp thread. She's fast, her fingers dancing like they have done this 1,000 times. This is pre-Jia dynasty, before emperors and armies, when life was about small wins like not frying under the sun. The umbrella's role is humble but undeniable. It's a tool that lets people work longer, trade farther, and maybe even dream a little bigger. As you wander deeper into the village, you see how these sun shields shape daily life. a storyteller sets up under one, drawing a crowd of kids who'd otherwise be hiding from the heat. You listen as he spins a tale about a sun goddess who scorches liars, probably a nudge to keep everyone honest. The canopy above him sags a bit, but it holds, casting a dappled shadow over his audience. You realize this isn't just about shade, it's about creating space. Under these early umbrellas, people gather, argue, laugh. They're not just surviving the sun, they're building a culture. You pause by a riverbank, where a fisherman's rigging a smaller version of the sun shield over his boat. It's lighter, tied with vines, and sways with the breeze. You can't help but admire the ingenuity. These people didn't have blueprints or YouTube tutorials, but they're solving problems with what's at hand. Another joke lands softly if ancient Chinese fishermen had patented this. They'd be lounging on a yacht instead of rowing through reeds. You imagine pitching their design on a modern startup show: bamboo, bark, and vibes. Shark Tank wouldn't know what hit them. The sun's dipping now, painting the sky in pinks and oranges. You feel the day's heat easing, but the umbrellas stay up, catching the last rays. They're more than tools, they're a statement. You notice a young couple sharing one, giggling as they try to balance it without tipping. It's a fleeting moment, but it sticks with you. The umbrella's not just keeping the sun at bay, it's carving out room for connection, for stories, for life. Historians might debate whether these early canopies were status symbols or pure utility, but you're starting to see them as both. They're practical. Sure, no, but they're also a spark of something bigger, something that'll carry through centuries. You take a deep breath, letting the evening cool your skin. The village is quieter now, the market winding down. You spot an old man folding his sun shield, tying it with a strip of cloth. It's a ritual, one you'll see evolve as the centuries roll on. For now, though, you're content to linger here, in the umbrella's earliest days, where every shade cast feels like a small victory against the sun's relentless glare. You're still in ancient China, but the world feels a little sharper now, thus like the dawn of something organized. It's the Xia dynasty, roughly 2070 BCE, and you're standing in a bustling workshop where the air smells of fresh-cut bamboo and sticky wax. The proto-umbrellas you saw before are getting a serious glow-up. You watch artisans, their hands steady as surgeons, carve bamboo into slimmer, stronger poles. These folks aren't just slapping leaves on sticks anymore. They're crafting shade with purpose, turning crude sun shields into tools that scream ingenuity. The sun's still a tyrant, beating down on the clay-tiled roofs, but you're about to see how the Xia dynasty makes shade a craft worth mastering. You step closer to a workbench where a craftsman is shaving bamboo with a bronze blade. The shavings curl like tiny scrolls, piling up at his feet. He's focused, barely noticing you, as he fits the pole into a woven canopy. This one's tighter, made from mulberry bark boiled and beaten into a fabric that's almost paper-thin. You're impressed it's lighter than the palm leaf versions, and it holds its shape like a modern tent. A mainstream historical fact anchors this scene: archaeological finds from the Xia period, like those at Erlitou, show evidence of advanced woodworking tools, hinting that artisans had the skills to create portable, lightweight structures like these early umbrellas. You imagine the pride in their work, knowing their craft keeps traders cool and crops shaded. The workshop hums with activity. You hear the rhythmic tap of hammers and the soft chatter of workers swapping tips. One artisan, a woman with a braid down her back, is experimenting with a new trick. She's coating the canopy with a mix of wax and tree sap to make it repel dust. You smirk at the thought of her pitching this to her boss, ancient Chinese WD-40 basically. It's not waterproof, but it's a step toward durability. You notice another worker tying hemp cords to the frame, creating a tension system that keeps the canopy taut. It's not collapsible yet, but it's sturdier, and you can see why these upgrades matter. Traders need gear that won't snap in a gust, and farmers want shade that doesn't collapse mid-harvest. Here's a quirky tidbit that catches your eye. Some artisans are decorating their canopies with dyed threads, weaving patterns that look like abstract birds or rivers. You spot one with red streaks, maybe mimicking a sunset. It's not just functional, it's art. These aren't for the average farmer, they're for the village hotshots who want to flex a little. You imagine some wealthy merchant strutting through the market, his fancy sunshield turning heads. Historians still argue whether these decorations were purely aesthetic or carried deeper meaning, like clan symbols or offerings to the sun goddess. You lean toward the flex theory, but the spiritual angle's hard to dismiss when you see a priest nearby, his own canopy adorned with what looks like a dragon's silhouette. You wander outside, where the sun's high and the heat wraps around you like a blanket. The workshop's output is everywhere. Canopies dot the fields, shielding workers as they tend rice paddies. You pause by a farmer who's rigged his umbrella to a wooden stand, freeing his hands to dig. It's clever, like an ancient hack from a Reddit thread. Joke number one: if this guy had TikTok, he'd be viral for farming hacks you need to try. You admire his setup, the bamboo pole wedged into the earth, the canopy angled just right to catch the worst of the rays. It's a small innovation, but it's life-changing when you're out here all day. The Zhou dynasty's not just about better umbrellas, it's about systems. You notice a cart rolling by, loaded with finished canopies headed for a regional market. The driver's got a ledger well, a clay tablet with notches tracking orders. This isn't a free-for-all anymore. Shade's becoming a business. You follow the cart, your sandals kicking up dust, and arrive at a market square where merchants haggle under their own sun shields. The variety's wild, some canopies are broad and plain, others narrow with those dyed patterns. You overhear a buyer griping about prices, and you can't help but grin. Same old market drama, just with worse haircuts. You're starting to feel the weight of this era. The Zhou dynasty's laying foundations not just for umbrellas, but for how people think about tools. You spot a kid, maybe 10, helping his dad balance a canopy on a cart. The kid's got ideas, pointing at the frame and babbling about making it lighter. You wonder if he'll grow up to be the next big umbrella innovator. For now, he's just a kid with a bamboo splinter, but the spark's there. Joke number two: give this kid a century and he'll invent the pop-up umbrella, then lose it in a storm like the rest of us. As you weave through the market, you notice how umbrellas shape the space. They're not just personal shade, they're social hubs. A group of women gossip under one, their laughter carrying over the crowd. A storyteller's parked under another, spinning a yarn about a hero who outsmarted the sun. You listen for a bit, catching the moral respect the heavens, but don't let them cook you. The canopy above him sways, casting shadows that dance across his face. It's a reminder of what you saw in the last section, those early sun shields creating room for connection. Now, they're doing it with style. You drift toward the edge of the market, where a craftsman's demonstrating a new design. This one's got a double layer of fabric, trapping a pocket of air to keep it cooler underneath. You're no engineer, but you can feel the difference when you step under it like walking into AC. The crowd's impressed, tossing coins into a clay pot. You realize this is more than a product. It's a status symbol. The guy with the double layer shade isn't just staying cool. He's showing everyone he's got the cash for it. You flash back to that pig with its own sun shield from the last section. Same vibe. Fancier execution. The day's winding down, and the sun's dipping low, turning the sky a soft gold. You find a spot by a stream, where a worker's rinsing bamboo strips for tomorrow's batch. The water's cool, and you're tempted to dip your feet, but you're too caught up in the scene. The umbrellas are everywhere now, from the market to the fields to the workshop. They're not perfect, still heavy. Still a pain to carry, but they're evolving. You think about the artisans, their hands shaping bamboo and bark into something that's both tool and art. They're not just fighting the sun, they're building a legacy. You take a deep breath, letting the evening air fill your lungs. The workshop's still buzzing in the distance. But it's quieter now. The hammer's slowing. You spot an artisan packing up, his latest canopy tied to his back like a giant turtle shell. It's a goofy sight, and you stifle a laugh. Joke number 3: if this guy trips, he's got shade for life, but he'll never get up. You're starting to love this era, its mix of grit and cleverness. The Zhe dynasty's umbrellas aren't just keeping the sun at bay, they're setting the stage for something bigger, something you'll see unfold as the centuries roll on. You've stepped into the Shang dynasty around 1600 BCE, and the world feels heavier, more layered. The sun still blazes, but now it's casting shadows over bronze cauldrons and oracle bones, the hallmarks of a society obsessed with ritual and power. You're in a bustling city, maybe Yin, where the air smells of charred offerings and sweat. Umbrellas. Those bamboo and bark contraptions you saw in the Xi dynasty aren't just shade anymore, they're status symbols, hoisted high to mark who's got clout. You're about to see how the Shang elite turn these sun shields into emblems of divine favor, while the rest of the world scrambles under their glow. You're standing in a ceremonial plaza, the ground packed hard from countless processions. Above you, a massive canopy sways, held by four attendants in hemp robes. It's not for rain, nobody cares about that when the gods send it, but for the sun, which the Shang see as both life-giver and threat. Under this canopy, a king or high priest stands, his face painted with ochre, muttering prayers to ancestors. You feel the weight of the moment, the crowd's hushed awe. A mainstream historical fact, 0F8B fact, grounds this Shang dynasty artifacts, like bronze vessels from Anyang, show depictions of large, ornate canopies used in royal ceremonies, suggesting umbrellas were central to displaying power. You can almost taste the incense, thick and smoky, as the canopy's shadow pools around the priest's feet. You notice the umbrella itself. Bamboo ribs is now polished to a sheen, supporting a canopy of woven silk. Silk's new, a Shang innovation, and it's a game changer. You run your fingers along the edge in your imagination. Don't worry, you're not messing up history. It's smooth, dyed crimson with madder root, and embroidered with geometric patterns that scream, "I'm important." The thing's heavy, needing multiple people to carry. But that's the point, power isn't subtle here. You smirk at the thought of a modern influencer trying to flex with one of these. Joke number 1, post this on Instagram. And you'd need a crane, not a selfie stick. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Shang umbrellas doubled as ritual props. You spot one leaning against a shrine, its canopy painted with what looks like a snarling tiger. It's not just shade, it's a spiritual flex, maybe meant to scare off bad spirits or impress the ancestors. You imagine the priest waving it during a sacrifice, the crowd gasping as the tiger seems to lunge. Historians still argue whether these painted canopies were purely symbolic or had practical uses, like shielding sacred objects from the sun. You lean towards symbolic nobodies lugging a tiger umbrella through a market for shade. You wander from the plaza, dodging a cart piled with millet. The city's alive, with vendors shouting and dogs yapping. Umbrellas are everywhere, but not all are royal. Merchants have simpler versions, bamboo and bark, like the Zhedes, but tighter woven and sometimes dyed in cheaper blues. You see a trader haggling under one, his canopy sagging but doing the job. It's a far cry from the silk monstrosities of the elite, but it keeps him cool while he argues over a bolt of cloth. You're struck by the divide. Umbrellas aren't just tools anymore. They're a social ladder, with silk at the top and bark at the bottom. You pause by a workshop, where artisans are stitching a new canopy. The head craftsman, a wiry guy with ink-stained fingers, is barking orders. He's embroidering a phoenix onto the silk, each stitch precise. You're mesmerized it's art, not just function. The phoenix, a Shang symbol of renewal, glints in the sunlight. You imagine the noble who'll carry this, strutting through yin like they own the sun itself. Joke number 2, if this guy's phoenix umbrella doesn't get him a promotion, he's got to fire his stylist. The workshop's chaotic but organized. You see bamboo being steamed to bend without snapping, a trick the Shang perfected. Another artisan's mixing dyes, the air sharp with vinegar. You're tempted to ask for a sample, but you're just a ghost here, drifting through. The umbrellas they're making aren't for the masses, they're commissions for nobles or priests. You overhear a snippet about a general ordering one with dragon motifs for a campaign. It's not just shade, it's propaganda. A way to say the gods are with me, so don't try anything stupid. You step back into the street. The sun hotter now. You're starting to wish you had one of those bark umbrellas, but you're here for the story. You notice how umbrellas shape the city's rhythm. Nobles parade under theirs, attendants trailing like backup dancers. Commoners cluster in their shade, sharing space and gossip. It's like those Jia market hubs you saw, but amplified shades of currency. And the elite hold the bank. You flash back to that pig with its own sun shield. Now, it's nobles hogging the spotlight, their umbrellas screaming privilege. You find a quieter spot, a courtyard where a scribe's teaching kids under a modest canopy. He's scratching oracle bones, the kids squinting at the marks. The umbrella's plain, but it's doing its job, keeping the sun off their necks. You listen as the scribe explains how the king's umbrella shielded him during a recent divination. The kids nod, wide-eyed, like it's gospel. You realize umbrellas aren't just objects. They're woven into the Shang worldview, tying heaven to earth. As the day fades, you climb a hill overlooking Yin. The city sprawls below, dotted with umbrellas like colorful mushrooms. The royal ones stand out crimson, gold, swaying above processions. You think about the artisans, the silk, the phoenixes and tigers. The Shang took the Jia's humble sun shield and made it a power move. Joke number 3 if you forgot your umbrella in Yin. You weren't just hot, you were nobody. You're starting to see why these things mattered. Not just for shade, but for the stories they told. The sun's dipping, painting the sky like one of those dyed canopies, and you're ready to see where this umbrella obsession goes next. You've crossed into the Zhou dynasty around 1046 BCE, and the world feels like it's hit a growth spurt. The Shang's heavy bronze and silk pomp is fading, replaced by a sharper, more practical energy. You're in a sprawling Zhou city, maybe Haojing, where the air hums with the clink of iron tools and the chatter of a society rethinking everything. Umbrellas, those status-soaked canopies of the Shang, are evolving fast lighter, smarter, and built for a world that values brains over bling. You're about to see how the Zhou turns shade into a science, making umbrellas that don't just flex but function. You're standing in a workshop courtyard, the sun high and relentless. Artisans bustle around you, their hands moving like they're conducting an orchestra. One's shaving bamboo into ribs so thin they flex without breaking a Zhou innovation that makes your Side Dynasty sun shields look like dinosaur bones. You watch another worker stretch a canopy of hemp fabric, lighter than Shang silk but tougher than bark. It's waxed to repel dust, and you can't help but admire the upgrade. A mainstream historical fact ties this to reality. Zhou dynasty archaeological sites, like those in Shanxi, reveal iron tools with precision blades, enabling finer woodworking that revolutionized tools like umbrellas. You feel the progress in the air, sharp as the scent of fresh bamboo. The umbrellas here are a leap forward. You pick one up in your mind's eye, no time paradoxes here, and it's shockingly light, maybe half the weight of a Shang model. The ribs are jointed, not fully collapsible but close, with hemp cords letting you adjust the angle. You test it, tilting it against the sun, and the shade feels like a hug. It's not just practical, it's clever. You imagine a modern engineer geeking out over the design. Joke number 1, if the Zhou had Kickstarter, this umbrella would have funded in an hour, then been delayed for production issues. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Zhou umbrellas are painted with weather symbols, like clouds or wind swirls. You spot one with a stylized raindrop pattern, leaning against a wall. It's ironic nobody's using these for rain yet, but it might be a nod to the gods or just an artisan's whimsy. Historians still argue whether these designs were decorative or carried ritual meaning, like invoking fertility for crops. You lean toward decoration. The Zhou seem too practical for mystic raindrop vibes. But you love the flair. You step outside, where the city pulses with life. Farmers trudge past, their umbrellas rigged to carts or propped on stands, just like you saw in Xia but sleeker. Merchants use them too, their canopies dyed in earthy greens and yellows, shouting, "Buy my millet" under portable shade. The Zhou's big idea is efficiency, do more with less. You see a trader collapse his umbrella's ribs, tying it with a cord for easy carrying. It's not perfect, he fumbles a bit, and you stifle a grin. Progress, but not quite Mary Poppins. You wander to a market square, the ground dusted with chaff. Umbrellas dot the scene, but they're not the elite-only props of the Shang. The Zhou's social reforms, and with land divvied up to farmers, mean more people can afford shade. You overhear a vendor bragging about his new umbrella, light as a goose feather. His buddy rolls his eyes, and you chuckle ancient hype men never change. The vibe's democratic, at least compared to Yin's silk and bronze flexing. You think back to that Shang priest under his tiger canopy? Here, shades for everyone, not just the divine. You pause by a blacksmith's stall where iron tools gleam. The Zhou's ironworking is why these umbrellas are possible. Sharper blades mean finer bamboo joints, stronger frames. You watch a smith hammer a chisel, sparks flying like tiny stars. It's not umbrella specific, but it's the backbone of this era's tech. You imagine the artisans thanking him with a free canopy? Joke number 2, if this smith made umbrellas, they'd be indestructible but weigh as much as a cow. The sun's climbing, and you're feeling the heat. You duck under a communal umbrella, where a group of women are sorting grain. They're chatting about a local lord who tried to tax shade. Yeah, shade. The idea flopped, but it shows how umbrellas are woven into life. They're not just tools, they're part of the social fabric, like those Xia market hubs or Shang processions. You listen as one woman jokes about making her own umbrella from leftover hemp. You admire her hustle. DIY shade is peak Zhou energy. You drift toward a temple, where a ritual's underway. The priest's umbrella is fancier, dyed indigo, with bronze fittings, but it's still lighter than Shang's silk beasts. He's praying for a good harvest, the canopy shielding him from the sun's glare. You notice the crowd's umbrellas, a mix of hemp and dyed cloth, swaying like a field of flowers. It's a far cry from the Shang's rigid hierarchy. Historians debate whether the Zhou's umbrella boom was purely technological or tied to their mandate of heaven philosophy, which spread resources more evenly. You see both better tools and a culture that values access. As evening nears, you climb a hill overlooking the city. The sun's dipping, painting the sky in pinks and purples. Umbrellas are folding up, their ribs clicking like cicadas. You spot a kid running with a tiny version, probably his dad's prototype. It's wobbly, but he's grinning, dodging his mom's scolding. Joke number 3, give that kid 10 years, and he'll invent the umbrella hat, then regret it at the first windstorm. You love this era's vibe, gritty, inventive, a little chaotic. The Zhou took the Shang's pompous canopies and made them work for the people. You're ready to see where this shade revolution heads next, as the sun sets and the city hums below. You're now in the Warring States period, around 475 BCE, and the air crackles with tension. The Zhou dynasty's unity has fractured, and China's a chessboard of rival states Qi, Chu, Wei, and others each plotting to outmaneuver the rest. You're in a dusty military camp, probably in Zhao, where the sun glares like an enemy scout. Umbrellas, those sleek Zhou creations, aren't just for merchants or priests anymore. You're about to see them morph into surprising tools of warfare, shielding soldiers, hiding strategies, and even signaling moves in the chaos of battle. The stakes are high, and shade's no longer just comfort, it's tactical. You're standing near a general's tent, the ground rutted from chariot wheels. The tent's topped with a wide canopy, not silk, but toughened hemp, dyed a dull brown to blend with the earth. It's an umbrella, but beefier, designed to shield the general from both sun and prying eyes. You catch a whiff of oiled leather and hear the clank of bronze swords nearby. A mainstream historical fact grounds this text like the Sunzi Bingfa. Art of war from this period emphasized deception and mobility, and archaeological finds in Hubei show large portable canopies used in military camps, likely early umbrellas adapted for strategy. You feel the camp's pulse, every move calculated, every shadow a potential advantage. You watch the general, his face lined with stress, poring over a bamboo strip map under the canopy. His aides adjust it to block the sun's angle, keeping him cool and his plans hidden from enemy spies on distant hills. The umbrella's not just shade, it's a shield for secrets. You notice its frame bamboo, reinforced with iron brackets, a nod to Joe Tech but ruggedized for war. It's portable, propped on a collapsible stand, and you're impressed by the engineering. Joke number one: if this general's umbrella could talk, it'd spill more secrets than a reality show reunion. Here's a quirky tidbit: some armies used umbrellas as signal flags. You spot a soldier on a ridge, waving a smaller canopy, its red dye flashing in the sun. It's not for shade, but for coded messages, maybe advance or flank left. You imagine the enemy squinting, thinking it's just a fancy parasol, while the signal shifts the battle. Historians still argue whether these signal umbrellas were widespread or a niche trick used by states like Chu. You lean toward niche, it's too clever to be standard issue. But you love the idea of shade doubling as espionage. You wander through the camp, dodging a soldier polishing his spear. Umbrellas are everywhere, but they're not the market square models of the Joe. Soldiers rig them over supply carts to keep grain dry, not from rain, but from sun-baked spoilage. You see a medic under one, bandaging a wound, the canopy blocking glare so he can work. It's practical, but there's a grim edge: shade lets you fight longer, bleed less. You think back to the Joe farmer's cart shade. This is that ingenuity, weaponized. The warring states don't mess around, every tool's a multitasker. You pause by a training field, where recruits drill under a row of canopies. The sergeant's barking orders, his own umbrella propped nearby, dyed black with a white crane symbol. It's a flex, showing his rank, but it's also keeping him from keeling over in the heat. You overhear him gripe about a rival state's fancy chi umbrellas, supposedly collapsible with a single pull. You smirk: ancient shade envy is real? Joke number two: if Chi's umbrellas were that good, they'd have won the war by nap time. The camp's a microcosm of the era's chaos. You see umbrellas shielding blacksmiths as they forge arrowheads, their canopies blackened by soot. Another's over a scout, sketching terrain on a clay tablet, the shade hiding his work from nosy passersby. It's not just about comfort, it's about control. The warring states are a masterclass in using every resource, and umbrellas are no exception. You flash back to the Shang's silk canopies, all pomp and ritual. Here, shade's a soldier, not a showpiece. You drift to the camp's edge, where a strategist's plotting under a double-layered umbrella, two canopies trapping cooler air. A trick you saw in Xia, but refined. He's muttering about feints and ambushes, his fingers tracing invisible lines in the air. You realize the umbrella's not just a tool, it's a mindset. It lets you think clearly when the sun's trying to fry your brain. Historians debate whether the warring states' umbrella use was purely logistical or a psychological edge, boosting morale by showing we've got this. You see both soldiers under shade look sharper, less beaten down. As the sun dips, the camp glows orange. You climb a nearby rise, overlooking tents and canopies like a patchwork quilt. Some are tattered, others pristine, but they're all working shielding, signaling, hiding. You spot a lone umbrella on a hill, probably a lookout's, swaying in the breeze. It's a small thing, but in this era, small things win wars. Joke number three: forget swords. If you stole the enemy's umbrellas, they'd surrender by noon. You're starting to get why the warring states were so brutal. Every edge matters, and shade's an edge you don't see coming. The sky darkens, and you're ready to see how umbrellas fare when the wars end and a new empire rises. You've landed in the Qin dynasty, around 221 BCE, and the world feels like it's been put through a pressure cooker. The warring states' chaos is over, and Qin Shi Huang's iron grip has unified China into a single, relentless machine. You're in Xianyang, the capital, where the air smells of fresh ink and dust from endless construction. Umbrellas, those battle-hardened canopies of the warring states, are being streamlined, standardized, and churned out like the empire's roads and walls. You're about to see how the Qin turns shade into a state-controlled system, making umbrellas less art and more assembly line. You're standing in a massive workshop, its roof high enough to swallow echoes. Workers move in sync, like ants in a colony, cutting bamboo and weaving hemp under the watchful eye of an overseer with a clay tablet. The Qin love order, and this place is proof. The umbrellas here are uniform, same size, same drab beige canopy, same bamboo frame with iron pins. You pick one up in your head, no stealing from history, and it's sturdy but soulless, like a government-issued stapler. A mainstream historical fact backs this up. Qin dynasty records, like those found in Shuihudi texts, describe strict regulations on manufacturing, including tools and textiles, suggesting umbrellas were mass-produced for officials and laborers. You feel the empire's pulse efficiency over everything. The workshop's a marvel of scale. You watch a worker assemble a frame, his hands moving mechanically, slotting bamboo ribs into a pre-drilled hub. Another's brushing wax onto hemp fabric, not for flair but to make it last. The Qin don't care about phoenixes or tigers like the Shang. They want shade that works. Period. You notice a stack of finished umbrellas, each identical, ready for distribution to tax collectors or road builders. It's not sexy, but it's effective. Joke number one, if the Qin made umbrellas today, they'd come with a 50-page manual and a tax form. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Qin umbrellas were branded with the emperor's seal, a tiny stamp on the hub claiming them as state property. You spot one, the seal barely visible, on an umbrella propped in a corner. It's not for show, it's a warning steal this, and you're defying Qin Shi Huang himself. Historians still argue whether these seals were purely administrative or a propaganda flex, tying every shade to the emperor's divine mandate. You lean toward propaganda. The Qin loved reminding everyone who's boss, even under a sun shield. You step outside, where the sun's hammering Xianyang's wide streets. Umbrellas are everywhere, but they're not the vibrant Zhou market canopies or the Warring States tactical props. Officials carry them, their beige canopies bobbing like a sea of bureaucracy. You see one shielding a scribe as he tallies grain shipments, his brush steady in the shade. Another's over a laborer hauling stones for a new palace wall, keeping him from collapsing mid-shift. The Qin's genius is scale shade for the masses, not just the elite. You think back to the Shang's silk monstrosities. The Qin would have scoffed at that waste. You wander to a construction site, the air thick with dust. Workers move under shared umbrellas, their frames bolted to carts for stability. The design's simple but clever, wide enough for 3 people, with a slight curve to catch wind without tipping. You're impressed. It's like the Qin invented the concept of minimum viable product. You overhear a foreman grumbling about quotas, his own umbrella tied to his belt for quick deployment. Joke number 2. If this guy's umbrella breaks, he'll probably get sentenced to build a new Great Wall solo. The city's a grid of purpose. You see umbrellas over market stalls, but they're state-issued, not artisan-crafted. Merchants don't get to dye them fancy colors. Beige is the law. It's a far cry from the Zhou's green and yellow flair, but it works. Nobody's frying. And the empire's humming. You pause by a canal, where boats unload bamboo for the workshops. An official's checking inventory under his umbrella, its seal glinting in the sun. You realize shade's not just a tool here, it's a cog in the Qin machine, keeping workers productive and officials focused. You drift to a quieter street, where a teacher's drilling kids on legalist principles under a standard issue canopy. He's explaining how the empire's strength lies in uniformity, pointing to the umbrella as an example. The kids nod, but you catch one doodling a dragon on his tablet, maybe dreaming of Shang-style flair. It's a small rebellion, and you root for him. Historians debate whether the Qin's standardization crushed creativity or fueled progress. You see both umbrellas are better than ever, but they've lost their soul. As the sun sets, you climb a hill overlooking Shenyang. The city's a mosaic of beige canopies, swaying over streets, canals, and walls. It's not pretty, but it's unstoppable. Like the empire itself. You spot a lone umbrella by a guard post, its seal catching the last light. Joke number 3: if you forgot your chin umbrella, you'd probably be taxed for unauthorized sweating. You're starting to grasp the chin's obsession with control shades no exception. The sun's gone, and the city hums with purpose. You're ready to see how umbrellas fare when the chin's iron fist loosens and a new dynasty rises. You've stepped into the Han Dynasty around 206 BCE, and the world feels like it's exhaled after the chin's chokehold. Xianyang's given way to Chang'an, a sprawling city where the air smells of sesame oil and market spices. Umbrellas, those beige state-stamped workhorses of the Qin, are breaking free from uniformity. They're hitting the streets, flooding markets, and becoming as common as sandals. You're about to see how the Han make shade an everyday staple, turning umbrellas into tools for farmers, traders, and even poets sweating under the sun's glare. You're in a bustling market square, the sun high and merciless. Stalls overflow with silk bolts, clay pots, and skewered meat sizzling over coals. Umbrellas are everywhere over vendors, shoppers, even a stray dog napping in their shade. They're not the Qin's cookie-cutter models anymore. You spot one with a blue hemp canopy, another with red lacquered ribs, and a fancy silk version swaying over a wealthy woman bargaining for jade. A mainstream historical fact anchors this Han Dynasty tomb reliefs. Like those from Shandong, depict merchants and laborers under portable canopies, showing umbrellas were widespread across social classes. You feel the market's energy shade's no longer a luxury, it's a lifestyle. You pause by a stall where a vendor's selling umbrellas, his pitch loud and practiced. He's got a stack of them bamboo frames, hemp or silk canopies, some with simple wax coatings, others dyed in bold patterns. You pick one up in your imagination. No shoplifting across time. And it's light, with a clever hinge letting the ribs fold part way. It's not fully collapsible, but it's close. And you're impressed by the Han's knack for tweaking Joe designs. You imagine this vendor on a modern street corner, hawking sun shields. Get your sun shields. Joke number 1: if this guy had a website, he'd be selling artisanal shade with free shipping. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Han umbrellas were used as makeshift fans. You see a woman fanning herself with a small, handheld canopy, its bamboo ribs clicking as she waves it. It's not built for shade, but for stirring air. A side hustle for the umbrella family. Historians still argue whether these fan umbrellas were a fashion statement or a practical response to humid Han summers. You lean toward practical. Chang'an's sticky heat makes you want to fan yourself with anything, even a history book. You wander deeper into the market, dodging a cart piled with melons. Umbrellas shape the scene. Vendors cluster under wide ones, their shade doubling as a sales pitch shop here. Stay cool. You see a farmer bartering under a patched hemp canopy. Its edges frayed but holding. It's a far cry from the Qin's sterile beige, and you love the personality. You think back to the Warring States' tactical umbrellas. The Han are using shade for peace, not war, turning it into a social glue. People linger under canopies, swapping gossip or haggling over rice. It's the Zhou market vibe, but bigger, messier, more human. You stop by a workshop on the market's edge where artisans are assembling umbrellas. One's painting a silk canopy with a crane motif, the brushstrokes delicate. Another's testing a new joint, letting the frame collapse halfway for storage. The Han are innovators, building on Qin efficiency but adding flair. You overhear a worker joking about a noble who ordered a gold-leafed umbrella, impractical but a total flex. Joke number 2: if that noble trips under his gold shade, he'll be the shiniest pancake in Chang'an. The city's alive with possibility. You see umbrellas beyond the market over farmers and rice paddies, shielding them as they weed, over scribes outside a library, squinting at bamboo scrolls, even over a poet muttering verses by a canal, his canopy propped on a stick. The Han's prosperity, fueled by trade and agriculture, means more people can afford shade, You flash back to the Shang's elite-only canopies. Now, shades for anyone with a few coins. It's not equal silks still for the rich, but it's closer than ever. You drift to a quieter street, where a school teacher's lecturing kids under a wide umbrella. He's explaining the five elements, pointing to the canopy as wood, bamboo, and earth the shade it casts. The kids are half listening, one doodling a fish on his tablet. You grin. Some things never change. Historians debate whether the Han's umbrella boom was driven by wealth or cultural shifts. Like Confucianism's emphasis on practical virtue, you see both money buys the bamboo. But the Han's love of order makes shade a daily ritual. As the sun dips, you climb a hill overlooking Chang'an. The city glows, umbrellas dotting it like colorful coins blue. Red, hemp, silk. You spot a kid twirling a small canopy, laughing as it catches the breeze. It's a simple moment, but it sticks. Joke number 3, if that kid spins his umbrella any faster, he'll invent the helicopter and ruin history. You're starting to love the Han's vibe, vibrant, practical, a little chaotic. Umbrellas aren't just surviving here, they're thriving, woven into every corner of life. The sky darkens, and you're ready to see where shade travels next as the Han's roads stretch far beyond China. You're still in the Han Dynasty, around 100 CE, but your feet are on the move, tracing the Silk Road's dusty trails out of Chang'an. The sun's a relentless hammer, and the air smells of camel sweat and exotic spices. Umbrellas, those market staple sun shields you saw in the Han's bustling squares, are now global travelers, carried by traders and diplomats to distant lands. You're about to see how these bamboo and silk creations spread China's shade culture across Asia and beyond, planting seeds of style and utility in places that have never heard of the Han. You're plodding along a caravan route, the horizon shimmering with heat. Camels groan under bales of silk, and traders clutch umbrellas, some hemp, some silk, all battered by wind and sun. You're in a merchant's shadow, his canopy dyed a faded red, its bamboo ribs creaking but holding. It's not just shade, it's survival out here where the sun can turn your brain to porridge. A mainstream historical fact grounds this Han Dynasty trade records, like those in the Hanshu way to describe merchants carrying portable canopies on Silk Road journeys. Spreading Chinese designs to Central Asia and Persia, you feel the roads grind every step a gamble, every shade a lifeline. You notice the merchant's umbrella up close. It's Han-made, with a collapsible hinge you recognize from Chang'an's workshops. But it's been patched with foreign cloth, maybe Sogdian wool. The Silk Road's a melting pot, and umbrellas are soaking up the mix. You see another trader, his canopy painted with a Parthian-style lion, a nod to the empires he's crossed. It's a fusion of Han tech and foreign swagger, and you're digging the vibe. Joke number 1, if this guy's umbrella could blog, it'd have more followers than a travel influencer. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Silk Road umbrellas were traded as diplomatic gifts. You overhear a Han envoy, his silk canopy gleaming, boasting about gifting one to a Bactrian king. It's not just shade, it's a flex, showing off Han craftsmanship. The king probably twirled it like a parasol, clueless about its market square roots. Historians still argue whether these gift umbrellas were practical tools or pure status symbols in foreign courts. You lean toward status. A silk canopy in a desert palace screams, "Look at me more than stay cool." You trudge on, the caravan stretching like a snake. Umbrellas dot the line, some shielding traders, others rigged over carts to protect spices or scrolls. You spot a Buddhist monk under one, his hemp canopy plain but sturdy, shielding him as he chants sutras. The Silk Road's carrying more than goods, it's spreading ideas. And umbrellas are along for the ride. You think back to the Han market's colorful canopies. Out here, they're less about flair and more about endurance. But they're still tying people together: traders, monks, even bandits eyeing the caravan from afar. You pause at an oasis, where the air's cooler and palm trees cast their own shade. Traders gather under a communal umbrella, bartering silk for glass beads. You listen as a Sogdian merchant marvels at the umbrella's folding mechanism, comparing it to his clunky local sunshields. The Han design's a hit, and you can see why light, portable, and tough enough for a desert slog. Joke number 2 if the Sogdians steal this tech. They'll be selling Silk Road Shade knockoffs by next week. The Oasis is a hub, buzzing with languages. Sogdian, Tuckerian, Han Chinese. You see umbrellas everywhere, but they're evolving. A trader's added a leather fringe to his maybe a Kushan touch. Another's reinforced his bamboo with iron strips, a nod to Parthian metalwork. The Silk Road's a remix machine, and umbrellas are the canvas. You flash back to the Qin's beige uniformity. The Han's open trade has let shade go wild, blending cultures like a cosmic smoothie. You wander to a caravanserai, where a scribe's scribbling under a silk umbrella. Logging trade deals? His canopy's got a faint dragon pattern, a Han classic, but it's faded from months on the road. You realize umbrellas aren't just tools here, they're storytellers, carrying China's aesthetic to places like Samarkand or Palmyra. Historians debate whether the Silk Road's umbrella spread was driven by trade or cultural prestige. You see both merchants need shade to survive, but a silk canopy also says Han's got it going on. As the sun sets, you climb a dune overlooking the oasis. The caravan's camped, umbrellas propped like tired sentinels read. Hemp, patched, proud. You spot a lone trader adjusting the bamboo clicking softly. It's a small act, but it feels epic, like he's planting a flag for Han ingenuity. Joke number 3 if that umbrella survives the Silk Road. It deserves a medal or at least a better patch job. You're starting to love this era's sprawl gritty, vibrant, connected. Umbrellas aren't just shielding traders, they're carrying a piece of China to the world. The stars emerge, and you're ready to see how shade weathers the storms of the next era? You're in the Three Kingdoms period, around 220 CE, and China's a fractured mess. The Han Dynasty's golden age has collapsed into a three-way brawl. Wei, Shai, and Wu slugging it out for supremacy. You're in a Wei military outpost near Luoyang, where the air smells of charcoal and nervous sweat. Umbrellas, those Silk Road travelers and Han market staples, are caught in the chaos. No longer just shade, but symbols of loyalty, survival, and defiance. You're about to see how these bamboo canopies hold their own amid political turmoil, shielding generals, spies, and refugees in a world where trust is scarcer than shade. You're standing in the outpost command tent, the sun sneaking through gaps in the walls. A Wei general, his armor dented, strategizes under a wide hemp umbrella, its drab green blending with the tent's shadows. It's not for show, it's shielding his maps from sunlight and enemy scouts peering from distant ridges. You feel the tension, the weight of a kingdom teetering. A mainstream historical fact ties this to reality. The records of the Three Kingdoms mention commanders using portable canopies in camps, likely umbrellas to protect plans and maintain authority in chaotic times. You hear the scratch of a brush as an aide jots orders, the umbrella's shade keeping the ink from drying too fast. Up close, the general's umbrella is a Han holdover bamboo ribs, hemp canopy, but it's battle-worn, patched with coarse thread. You notice a small bronze emblem on the hub, a Wei crest, claiming it as kingdom property. It's a far cry from the Silk Road's flashy fusion designs, but it's functional, collapsible enough to pack on a march. You imagine the general's soldiers ribbing him about it shades nice, but it won't stop a Wu arrow. Joke number 1, if this umbrella could block betrayal, Wei might actually win this war. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Three Kingdoms umbrellas were used as makeshift banners. You spot one outside the tent, its canopy painted with a crude tiger. Wei's symbol, flapping to rally troops. It's not shade, it's a morale booster, screaming we're still here. Historians still argue whether these banner umbrellas were common or a desperate improvisation in cash-strapped armies. You lean toward desperation. Painting a tiger on hemp feels like a last-ditch flex when your kingdom's crumbling. You wander through the outpost, dodging soldiers sharpening spears. Umbrellas are scattered over supply carts to keep grain from baking, over medics stitching wounds, even over a spy whispering intel under a tattered canopy to hide his face. They're not the vibrant Han market models. These are grim, practical, often recycled from better days. You think back to the Warring States' tactical umbrellas. The Three Kingdoms are leaner, meaner, using shade to scrape by. A soldier grumbles about Shu's fancy silk shades. Probably a rumor, but you smirk shade envies alive and well. You pause by a refugee camp on the outpost's edge, where civilians huddle under patched umbrellas. A woman's rigged one over her kids. Its bamboo cracked, but shielding them as they share a meager rice bowl. It's heartbreaking but fierce. She's fighting the sun and the war with what she's got. The Three Kingdoms aren't just about generals. They're about people clinging to normalcy. You flash back to the Hans poet under his canal-side canopy. Here, shade's not poetic, it's survival. You drift to a nearby market, small and tense, where traders sell under jury-rigged umbrellas. One's got a Wu merchant. His canopy dyed a risky blue in Wei territory, haggling over salt. His umbrella's silk, a rare luxury, and you wonder if he's a spy or just stubborn. You overhear a Wei guard muttering about confiscating at Blue's 2 Wu for comfort. Joke number 2 if that merchant's umbrella starts a diplomatic incident. He's earning his pay the hard way. The outpost hums with paranoia. You see umbrellas everywhere, but they're not just shade, they're statements. A Wei officer's canopy has a loyalty oath stitched into it, a grim reminder of the era's betrayals. Another's over a Shu defector, hiding his face as he negotiates asylum. The Three Kingdoms turn everything into a symbol, and umbrellas are no exception. Historians debate whether umbrellas in this period were more about utility or signaling allegiance. You see, both shade keeps you alive, but a Wei tiger or Wu blue picks your side. As the sun dips, you climb a hill overlooking the outpost. The landscape's dotted with umbrellas green for Wei, a few rogue blues, some too tattered to claim a side. You spot a lone canopy by a watchtower, swaying as a guard scans the horizon. It's a small thing, but in this era, small things shade. Loyalty. Hope keep the fight going. Joke number 3 if you stole that guard's umbrella. He'd probably challenge you to a duel, then faint from heat stroke. You're starting to feel the Three Kingdoms' weight fractured. Desperate, but stubborn. Umbrellas aren't winning wars, but they're holding the line. The stars emerge, and you're ready to see how shade evolves when the chaos settles. You've entered the Jin dynasty around 280 CE, and the air feels like a brief sigh of relief. The Three Kingdoms' brutal tug of war has ended, with Jin stitching China back together, at least for now. You're in Luoyang, a city reborn as the Jin's capital, where the streets hum with silk-clad nobles and the scent of plum blossoms. Umbrellas, those gritty survivors of the Three Kingdoms, are shedding their wartime scars. You're about to see them blossom into works of art. Their bamboo frames and silk canopies adorned with designs so intricate they rival the era's poetry. This is the golden age of umbrella artistry, and you're right in its heart. You're standing in an artisan's studio, the air thick with the tang of lacquer and mulberry dye. A master craftsman, his fingers stained blue, is painting a silk umbrella with a scene of cranes dancing over a misty lake. The bamboo ribs are polished to a gleam, each one carved with tiny lotus patterns. You're mesmerized. It's not just shade, it's a canvas. A mainstream historical fact grounds this Jin dynasty art. Like tomb murals from Dunhuang, shows ornate canopies with floral and animal motifs, suggesting umbrellas were prized as decorative objects for the elite. You feel the studio's quiet focus, like the craftsman's holding his breath with every brushstroke. Up close, like the umbrella's a marvel. The silk's so fine it shimmers, stretched taut over a frame that's lighter than anything you saw in the Three Kingdoms. The ribs are jointed with bronze hinges, letting the canopy fold halfway, a Han trick, but perfected. You imagine twirling it, the cranes seeming to fly. It's not for farmers or soldiers. This is for nobles who want shade that screams sophistication. Joke number one: if you drop this umbrella in a gin party, you'd start a riot over who gets to Instagram it first. Here's a quirky tidbit: some gin umbrellas were scented. You catch a whiff of sandalwood from one leaning against a wall. It's silk infused with oils to waft perfume when opened. It's a fleck shade that smells like luxury. Historians still argue whether these scented canopies were purely for status or had ritual uses, like honoring ancestors with fragrance. You lean toward status. The gin elite loved anything that made them stand out, and a scented umbrella is basically ancient Chanel. You step outside, where Loyang streets pulse with wealth. Nobles glide past, their umbrellas a riot of color: crimson with dragons, azure with peonies, gold with swirling clouds. Attendants carry them, ensuring their master's skin stays pale. A gin obsession. You see a poet under one, scribbling on a silk scroll, his canopy painted with a moonlit river. It's like he's posing for a painting, and you smirk. Gin's all about aesthetics. You think back to the Han's market umbrellas. Practical and patched, the gin have taken that utility and draped it in art. You wander to a festival by the Luo River, where umbrellas are everywhere. A noble woman's canopy, embroidered with silver thread, catches the sun like a mirror. Another's got a tassel fringe that sways as she dances. The crowd's buzzing, and you hear a vendor hawking custom shades with painted zodiac signs. It's a far cry from the kin's beige uniformity, and you love the chaos. Joke number two: if that vendor's zodiac umbrellas predict rain, he's about to be very disappointed. The festival's a showcase of gin creativity. You see an umbrella rigged to a boat, shielding musicians as they pluck gherkins on the water. Another's propped over a calligraphy contest, its silk painted with swirling script. The gin's prosperity, fueled by a brief reunification, lets artisans experiment: bamboos carved, silks dyed. Even hinges are etched with patterns. You flash back to the Three Kingdoms' tiger-painted banners. Those were about survival, but these are about beauty. A celebration of peace, however shaky. You pause by a temple, where a monk's umbrella is simpler green silk. No cranes, but still elegant, shielding him as he chants. It's a reminder that not all gin umbrellas are for show. Some still serve the humble purpose of shade. Historians debate whether the gin's umbrella artistry was driven by wealth or a cultural shift toward refinement, like the rise of pure conversation philosophy. You see, both money buys the silk, but the gin's love of beauty makes it sing. As the sun sets, you climb a hill overlooking Luoyang. The city glows, umbrellas like colorful lanterns cranes, dragons, moons, all swaying in the breeze. You spot a lone artisan packing his tools, his own umbrella folded under his arm, its silk glinting with a half-finished phoenix. It's a small moment, but it feels alive, like the gin's fleeting unity. Joke number three: if that phoenix umbrella flies away, it's probably headed for a better dynasty. You're starting to adore this era: lavish, delicate, a little vain. Umbrellas aren't just shielding the elite, they're painting a moment in time. The stars rise, and you're ready to see how shade shifts as the gin's glory fades. You're in the southern dynasties, around 420 CE, and China's split like a cracked vase. The gin's golden unity has crumbled, and the south under Liu Song, then Qi, Liang, and Chen is a patchwork of fleeting regimes. You're in Jiankang, the humid capital of Liu Song, where the air smells of lotus ponds and charcoal braziers. Umbrellas, those dazzling gin artworks, are diversifying, taking on regional flavors as each dynasty tweaks them to fit local needs and tastes. You're about to see how the South's steamy climate and fractured politics shape shade into a kaleidoscope of styles, from practical to downright eccentric. You're standing in a riverside workshop, the Yangtze's damp breath seeping through bamboo shutters. Artisans are crafting umbrellas, but there's no gin uniformity here. Every canopy is a little different. One's weaving a broad hemp canopy, waxed thick to handle sudden rains, a nod to the South's soggy weather. Another's painting a silk umbrella with lotus flowers, the Liu Song's favorite motif. You're struck by the variety. It's like each artisan's got their own manifesto. A mainstream historical fact anchors this southern dynasty's tomb artifacts, like those from Nanjing, show canopies with regional designs lotus, bamboo, or fish reflecting local cultures and climates. You feel the workshop's buzz, a mix of pride and rivalry. You examine a rain-ready umbrella, its hemp canopy glistening with wax. It's heavier than Jin's silk showpieces, with bamboo ribs reinforced to withstand gusts. You test it in your mind's eye, and the shade's cool, but it's clearly built for drizzle, not just sun. The South's humidity demands this shift reigns no longer a dragon god blessing. It's a daily nuisance. You imagine a Jiankong merchant cursing as he fumbles with it in a downpour. Joke number 1. If this umbrella survives a monsoon, it deserves a statue in the town square. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Southern Dynasty's umbrellas doubled as insect screens. You spot one with a fine silk mesh draped from its edges, designed to keep mosquitoes off a noble's delicate skin. It's a genius hack for the swampy South, where bugs are basically airborne assassins. Historians still argue whether these netted canopies were elite luxuries or common in humid regions. You lean toward elite, slapping mosquitoes is universal, but silk nets scream, "I'm fancy." You step outside, where Jiankong's streets are a humid maze. Umbrellas are everywhere, reflecting the South's diversity. A Liu Song official struts under a silk canopy painted with cranes, a Jin holdover but with a softer, almost dreamy style. A fisherman's got a simpler one, bamboo and oiled cloth, shielding him as he mends nets by the river. You see a Chi merchant's umbrella, dyed a bold green with fish patterns, a nod to his coastal roots. It's a far cry from the Three Kingdoms' grim banners. The South's chaos breeds creativity, not just survival. You think back to the Han's market canopies, colorful but practical. Here, shades a canvas for identity. You wander to a bustling market, where vendors hawk umbrellas like they're fine art. One's got a Chen-style canopy with swirling cloud designs. Another a Liang model with bamboo ribs carved like dragon claws. You overhear a buyer haggling, insisting his umbrella must scream key to impress his in-laws. You smirk, shades a social weapon now. Joke number 2, if that guy's umbrella doesn't win his mother-in-law's approval. He's sleeping on the Yangtze tonight. The market's a microcosm of the South's fractured spirit. You see umbrellas shielding poets reciting by lotus ponds, their canopies painted with verses inked in black. Another's over a Buddhist monk. It's plain hemp, a contrast to the gaudy silk nearby, but still waxed for rain. The Southern dynasties are a tug-of-war between old Jin elegance and new regional grit. And umbrellas reflected some are art. Others are armor against the elements. You flash back to the Jin's scented canopies. The South's too soggy for that nonsense. But they've got their own flair. You pause by a temple, where are rituals underway. The priest's umbrella is a hybrid silk for status, waxed for rain, with a lotus emblem tying it to Liu Song's spiritual vibe. He's praying for peace, a tall order in this era. The crowd's umbrellas are a mixed fancy silk, sturdy hemp, even a few with those mosquito nets. Historians debate whether the South's umbrella diversity was driven by climate or political fragmentation. You see both reinforces the wax, but each dynasty's ego demands its own stamp. As the sun dips, you climb a hill overlooking Jiankong. The city's a humid glow, umbrellas dotting it like wildflowers, lotus pinks, fish greens, cloud whites. You spot a lone artisan by the river, testing a new umbrella, its mesh net fluttering as he waves off a bug. It's a small act, but it feels like the South adaptable, stubborn, a little weird. Joke number 3, if that netted umbrella catches a fish, he's starting a new dynasty. You're starting to love this era's messy charm, wet, divided, but bursting with ideas. Umbrellas aren't just shade here. They're a mirror of a fractured South. The stars peek out, and you're ready to see how shade fares as China tries to stitch itself back together. You've slipped into the Sui and Tang dynasties, spanning roughly 581 to 907 CE, and the world feels like it's slowing down, like a river losing its rush. China's reunified under the Sui, then flourishing under the Tang, but something's off in Jiangkang, now called Yangzhou and Chang'an. The air smells of jasmine tea and wet stone, but umbrellas, those vibrant southern dynasties creations, are losing their spark. You're about to see how Shade's cultural clout fades as rain-ready canopies and regional flair give way to neglect, overshadowed by grander Tang obsessions like poetry and palaces. This is the beginning of the umbrella's decline, and you're walking through its quiet unraveling. You're in a Yangzhou workshop, smaller than the Jin's lavish studios. Its bamboo walls damp from recent rain. Artisans work, but the mood's subdued. No lotus-painted silks or mosquito net experiments here. They're crafting umbrellas, mostly hemp, waxed thick to handle the Tang's wetter climate. The designs are plain muted browns, some with basic cloud patterns. You pick one up in your mind, no touching, and it's heavier than the Southern Dynasty's models, built for rain over sun. A mainstream historical fact grounds this Tang Dynasty records. Like the Tang Huiao, note a shift to rain-resistant canopies with fewer mentions of ornate sun shields, signaling a cultural pivot away from umbrellas as art. You feel the workshop's lethargy, like the artisans know their craft's fading. The umbrellas are functional, no question. You notice a worker brushing extra wax onto a canopy, ensuring it sheds water like a duck's back. The bamboo ribs are sturdy, with iron pins for durability, but there's no flare, no cranes, no dragons. The Tang's cosmopolitan vibe, with its Persian traders and Buddhist monks, doesn't seem to touch umbrellas. You imagine a Jin artisan scoffing at this practicality over beauty approach. Joke number one: if a Tang umbrella tried to flex at a Jin party, it'd be politely asked to leave, then get rained on. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Tang umbrellas were used as portable market signs. You spot one outside, its canopy painted with a crude fish marking a vendor's stall. It's not art, it's advertising, a step down from the Southern Dynasty's lotus motifs. Historians still argue whether this commercial use shows umbrellas' decline or their adaptability to Tang's urban boom. You lean toward decline. Turning a canopy into a billboard feels like a demotion from the Jin's scented silk. You step into Yangzhou's streets, slick from a morning shower. Umbrellas are common, but unremarkable merchants huddle under them, shielding goods, while laborers prop them over construction sites. They're rain-focused, not sun shields, and you notice fewer than in Han markets. The Tang's obsessed with grandeur. Think massive pagodas, and Li's poetry and umbrellas seem small. You see a noble under a silk canopy, but it's plain. No match for Jin's peony riots. You think back to the Three Kingdoms tiger banners. Those had purpose, even in chaos. Here, shade's an afterthought. You wander to a Chang'an market, hoping for some Southern Dynasty's vibrancy. It's lively silk traders, spice vendors, even a Sogdian juggler, but umbrellas are sparse. A fishmonger's got one, its fish-painted canopy sagging, more sign than shade. Another's over a scribe, shielding his scrolls from drizzle. But it's just hemp. No flair. The Tang's wealth could have made umbrellas dazzling, but they're overshadowed by fashion-think flowing robes and jade hairpins. Joke number two: if you suggested a Tang fashionista trade her hairpin for an umbrella, she'd laugh you out of Chang'an. The market's bustle can't hide the shift. You see umbrellas, but they're utilitarian, not cultural icons. A monk's got one, plain and waxed, shielding him as he begs alms. A farmer's propped one over his cart, keeping rain off his cabbages. It's practical, but you miss the Han's colorful chaos or the Jin's artistry. You flash back to the Silk Road's fusion canopies. The Tang's global reach could have spread umbrellas further, but they're stuck in the background, like a forgotten prop. You pause by a Tang palace, where a minor official's umbrella shields him as he hurries through a courtyard. It's silk, a nod to status, but the design's basic faint waves, no dragons. The Tang's elite are too busy with banquets and calligraphy to care about shade as art. Historians debate whether umbrellas declined because of climate shift's wetter weather, favoring rain gear or cultural priorities. Like Tang's focus on literary refinement, you see both rain demands wax, but the Tang's ego chases bigger symbols. As the sun breaks through clouds, you climb a hill overlooking Chang'an. The city's a marvel, pagodas gleam. Markets hum, but umbrellas are barely visible. Just scattered hemp dots in a sea of splendor. You spot a lone vendor folding his fish-painted canopy. The paint chipped. It's a quiet moment, but it stings. Like watching a star fade. Joke number 3 if that umbrella could complain. It'd write a Tang poem about being ignored, then get wet. You're starting to feel the umbrella's slide, once a cultural giant, now a rainy day tool. The sky clears, and you're ready to see if shade can claw its way back in the next era. You've arrived in the Song Dynasty, around 960 CE, and the world feels like it's caught a second wind. After the Tang's slow fade, China's buzzing again under the song, with Kaifeng's markets overflowing and the air thick with ink and roasted chestnuts. Umbrellas, those lackluster Tang rain shields, are staging a comeback. Not as elite art like in the Jin, but as urban essentials. You're about to see a brief renaissance of shade in the song's crowded cities, where canopies pop up over tea houses, scholars, and street vendors, fighting to reclaim their place in a world obsessed with commerce and culture. You're standing in a Kaifeng workshop, its open courtyard alive with the clatter of bamboo and the hum of workers. Artisans are crafting umbrellas with a focus you haven't seen since the Han bamboo ribs, oiled paper canopies, and a new twist collapsible frames that fold with a satisfying click. You pick one up in your imagination, no sticky fingers, and it's light. The paper taut and glossy, built for both sun and rain. A mainstream historical fact anchors this Song Dynasty text, like the Qingming Shanghe II scroll, depict urban scenes with portable canopies, showing umbrellas as common in city life, blending Tang's rain-ready designs with Han's market vibrancy. You feel the workshop's energy, like the song's betting on shade to keep up with its urban boom. The umbrellas are clever. You notice a worker testing a folding mechanism, sliding a bronze pin to lock the ribs. It's not perfect fiddly in a strong wind, but it's a leap from the Tang's clunky hemp. The paper's a song innovation, cheaper than silk, tougher than hemp, and coated with tung oil to repel water. You imagine a modern designer nodding in approval? Joke number 1 if the song pitched this collapsible umbrella on Shark Tank. They'd get a deal, just don't test it in a typhoon. Here's a quirky tidbit: some song umbrellas were painted with proverbs. You spot one leaning against a wall. Its paper canopy, inked with patience, outlasts the storm. It's not just shade, it's a walking fortune cookie, maybe a nod to the song's Confucian revival. Historians still argue whether these proverb-painted canopies were scholarly flexes or marketing gimmicks for urban buyers. You lean toward marketing. A catchy quote on your umbrella is a great way to stand out in Kaifeng's crowded streets. You step into the city, where the sun's high and the streets are a chaotic ballet vendors shouting, ox carts rumbling, scholars debating under tea house awnings. Umbrellas are everywhere, a riot of function and modest flair. A tea merchant's got one. Its paper dyed red with a crane sketch. Shielding his wares? A scholar's under another. Plain but wide, reading a scroll without squinting. You see a street performer twirling a small umbrella painted with stars, drawing a crowd. It's not Jin-level artistry, but it's alive. A far cry from the Tang's drab decline. You think back to the Han's market hubs. The song's got that vibe, but denser, faster. You wander to a canal-side market, where umbrellas double as shop signs, like the Tang's fish-painted canopies, but with more swagger. One's got a noodle vendor's name inked in bold black, another a pawnbroker's with a coin motif. You overhear a buyer haggling for a lucky umbrella with a prosperity proverb, insisting it'll boost his business. You smirk shades a hustle now. Joke number 2 if that guy's lucky umbrella doesn't make him rich. He's trading it for a lottery ticket. The market's a snapshot of song ingenuity. You see umbrellas rigged to boats, shielding boatmen as they ferry rice. Another's propped over a storyteller, his canopy painted with a battle scene to match his tale. The song's urban boom, think printing presses and paper money, fuels this revival. Paper's cheap, cities are packed, and shade's a must when you're elbow to elbow with 1,000 strangers. You flash back to the Southern Dynasty's lotus canopies. The song's less poetic but more practical, built for the grind. You pause by a Confucian academy, where a teacher's lecturing under a wide umbrella. Its proverb reading "Wisdom shades the heart." He's explaining Neo-Confucianism, using the canopy as a metaphor for moral clarity. The students nod, but one's doodling a fish, probably dreaming of the market. Historians debate whether the song's umbrella renaissance was driven by tech like paper and collapsible frames, or cultural shifts, like urban pride. You see, both paper makes shade affordable, but the song's love of hustle gives it soul. As the sun dips, you climb a hill overlooking Kaifeng. The city's a glowing maze, umbrellas dotting it like paper lanterns red. Plain, proverb painted, all swaying in the evening breeze. You spot a lone vendor folding his "The Crane" sketch, catching the last light. It's a fleeting moment, but it feels like the song busy, clever, grabbing shade's spotlight while it can. Joke number 3, if that umbrella could talk, it'd brag about surviving Kaifeng's crowds, then beg for a day off. You're starting to love this era's scrappy charm, but you sense the umbrella's comeback is fragile. The stars rise, and you're ready to see why shade slips again in the next chapter. You're in the Yuan and Ming dynasties, spanning roughly 1271 to 1644 CE, and the world feels like it's turning inward. The song's urban buzz has faded under the Mongol-ruled Yuan and the insular Ming, with cities like Dadu and Nanjing humming but lacking the same spark. Umbrellas, those briefly revived song paper canopies, are slipping into obscurity, their cultural shine dulled by shifting priorities and climates. You're about to see why shade fades, as rain-focused designs dominate and umbrellas become mundane tools, overshadowed by grander symbols like porcelain and pavilions. This is the slow unraveling of the umbrella's story, and you're walking through its quiet retreat. You're in a Dadu workshop, its air heavy with the scent of tung oil and damp wood. Yuan artisans are crafting umbrellas, but it's a far cry from the song's lively studios. The canopies are oiled paper, thick and practical, built for rain over sun. You pick one up in your mind, no time travel theft, and it's sturdy but uninspired plain brown, with bamboo ribs that creak when opened. A mainstream historical fact grounds this Yuan and Ming archaeological finds. Like those in Beijing, show rain-focused umbrellas with minimal decoration, suggesting a shift from sun shields to wet weather gear as northern climates grew wetter. You feel the workshop's monotony, like the artisans are just punching a clock. These umbrellas are all about function. You watch a worker layer oil onto a paper canopy, ensuring it repels water. The frame's collapsible, a song holdover, but the bronze pins are rough, more about durability than finesse. There's no flair, no proverbs, no cranes. The Yuan, under Mongol rule, prioritized conquest and trade over cultural frills, and the Ming, obsessed with restoring Chinese traditions, focus on grand temples, not shade. You imagine a song vendor scoffing at this lack of hustle. Joke number 1, if a Yuan umbrella tried to sell itself, it'd mumble "keeps you dry" and call it a day. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Ming umbrellas were used as stage props. You spot one in a corner. It's paper painted with a crude moon for a local opera. It's not shade, it's a set piece, a demotion from the song's proverb-painted canopies. Historians still argue whether this theatrical use shows umbrellas' versatility or their fall from cultural relevance. You lean toward the fall. Turning a canopy into a prop feels like a last gasp when porcelain vases are stealing the spotlight. You step into Dadu's streets, where a light drizzle falls. Umbrellas are common, but forgettable merchants use them to shield goods. Laborers prop them over carts, but they're all the same: brown, oiled, dull. You see a Ming scholar under one, his paper canopy sagging as he hurries to a library. But it's plain, no match for the song's starry performers. The era's focus is elsewhere. Yuan's horse relays, Ming's massive fleets. Umbrellas are just there. You think back to the Tang's fish-painted signs, even those had more personality. You wander to a Nanjing market, hoping for a flicker of song vibrancy. It's busy silk vendors, tea stalls, but umbrellas are sparse, mostly shielding from rain, not sun. A fishmonger's got one. It's paper chipped. More about keeping his stall dry than drawing eyes. Another's over a puppeteer, plain and functional, letting him work through a shower. The Ming's wealth could have revived umbrellas, but they're lost in the shadow of blue and white ceramics and forbidden cities. Joke number 2, if you pitched a fancy umbrella to a Ming emperor, he'd trade it for a vase and not even blink. The market's lively, but shade's an afterthought. You see a monk under a tattered canopy, chanting through the drizzle. A farmer's got one tied to his ox cart, keeping rain off his grain. It's practical, but you miss the Jin's lotus silks or the song's urban swagger. You flash back to the Silk Road's fusion canopies. The Yuan and Ming could have spread umbrellas globally, but they're too busy with conquest or navel-gazing to care. You pause by a Ming academy, where a teacher's lecturing under a plain umbrella, shielding his scrolls from a leak in the roof. He's discussing Confucian harmony, ignoring the canopy's lack of charm. The students are bored, one sketching a ship, probably dreaming of Zheng He's voyages. Historians debate whether umbrellas faded because of wetter climates or cultural shifts, like the Ming's focus on monumental architecture. You see both rain demands oil, but the era's ego chases bigger legacies. As the sun peeks through clouds, you climb a hill overlooking Nanjing. The city's grand palaces gleam. Markets hum, but umbrellas are barely noticeable, just scattered brown smudges in the rain. You spot a lone artisan folding the paper crinkling like a sigh. It's a quiet moment, but it stings, like watching a friend fade away. Joke number 3, if that umbrella could write its memoirs. It'd be titled, From Jin Art to Ming Wet, a Tragedy. You're starting to feel the umbrellas slide once a cultural star. Now a soggy footnote. The sky clears, and you're ready to see how Shade's story ends in the final dynasty. You've reached the Qing dynasty, around 1644 to 1912 CE, and the world feels like it's closing a long chapter. China's under Manchu rule, with Beijing's forbidden city gleaming and the air thick with incense and coal smoke. Umbrellas, those faded Ming rain shields, are at their quietest, reduced to practical tools in a society chasing modernity and grappling with tradition. You're about to reflect on the umbrella's ancient legacy as it slips from cultural giant to humble utility. Its bamboo and paper canopies overshadowed by Western imports and grand Qing ambitions. This is the end of the umbrella's story in ancient China, and you're here to see it fade gently into the background. You're in a Beijing workshop, its walls lined with drying paper sheets. Artisans craft umbrellas, but it's a small operation, almost an afterthought. The canopies are oiled paper, brown or black, built for rain with bamboo ribs that snap into place. You pick one up in your imagination, no touching history, and it's solid but unremarkable, like a well-made broom. A mainstream historical fact ties this to reality Qing dynasty trade records. Like those in Guangzhou archives, show mass-produced rain umbrellas, often eclipsed by Western parasols imported via Canton, signaling the decline of traditional designs. You feel the workshop's quiet resignation, as if the artisans know their craft's a relic. These umbrellas are pure function. You watch a worker brush oil onto a canopy, layering it to fend off Beijing's drizzles. The frame's collapsible. A song legacy, but the materials are cheap bamboo's rough. Pins are iron. No bronze finesse. The Qing's focused on bigger things: opium wars, railroads. Palace intrigue and umbrellas are background noise. You imagine a song artisan wincing at this lack of flair? Joke number 1, if a Qing umbrella tried to strut in a song market, it'd be laughed back to the workshop then get soaked. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Qing umbrellas were used as festival lanterns. You spot one outside, it's paper painted with a red carp, rigged to hold a candle for a mid-autumn parade. It's not shade, it's decor, a final repurposing of a once mighty tool. Historians still argue whether this festival use shows umbrellas' adaptability or their irrelevance as shade. You lean toward irrelevance. Turning a canopy into a lantern feels like a retirement party for a faded star. You step into Beijing's streets, where a light rain falls. Umbrellas are common, but blend-in vendors use them to shield stalls. Porters carry them over sedan chairs, all plain paper, no proverbs or cranes. You see a scholar under one, his canopy sagging as he hurries to an exam hall, but it's outshined by his silk robe. Western parasols, with their frilly lace, are creeping in, carried by wealthy women who scoff at peasant paper shades. You think back to the Jin's lotus silks, those were art. These are just weatherproofing. You wander to a bustling market, searching for a flicker of song vibrancy. It's lively tea sellers, jade carvers, but umbrellas are sparse, mostly shielding from rain. A noodle vendor's got one. It's paper chipped, more about keeping broth dry than drawing customers. Another's over a fortune teller, plain and functional, letting him read palms through a shower. The Qing's global trade could have revived umbrellas, but they're lost to foreign novelties and internal strife. Joke number 2, if you pitched a fancy umbrella to a Qing merchant, he'd trade it for a British umbrella and a crate of opium. The market's chaotic, but shade's a ghost. You see a monk under a tattered canopy, chanting in the drizzle. A farmer's got one tied to his cart, keeping rain off his turnips. It's practical, but you miss the Han's colorful chaos or the Southern Dynasty's lotus flare. You flash back to the Silk Road's fusion canopies. The Qing could have spread umbrellas worldwide, but they're too tangled in rebellions and treaties to care. You pause by a Confucian temple, where a priest's umbrella shields an altar from rain. It's plain, with a faint wave pattern, no match for the Liu Song's lotus emblems. He's praying for stability, a tall order in the Qing's turbulent years. Historians debate whether umbrellas faded because of Western influence or a cultural shift toward monumental symbols, like the Summer Palace. You see both imports steal the spotlight, but the Qing's ego chases bigger legacies. As the rain slows, you climb a hill overlooking Beijing. The city's grand palaces shimmer. Markets hum, but umbrellas are faint smudges, brown paper dots in a fading story. You spot a lone artisan folding the carp painting barely visible. It's a quiet end, like a candle burning low. Now, let's ease you into sleep, the day's journey softening like the rain fading over Beijing. Picture yourself by a tranquil stream, its gentle ripples catching the last light of dusk. The umbrellas you followed from Sia's bamboo shades to Qing's humble paper rest quietly in history's embrace, their stories woven into the earth. You're lying on a soft blanket, the air cool, a faint breeze carrying the scent of jasmine. Each breath you take is slower, deeper, like the stream's unhurried flow. The stars above twinkle, whispering that you're safe, that the world's hustle can wait. Feel your shoulders relax, your thoughts drift like leaves on the water. The umbrella's tale is done, a legacy of shade and ingenuity. And now it's time for you to rest, cradled by the night's gentle hum. Sleep deeply, dream softly,